Good afternoon, everybody. It's that time yet again. It's Friday. Time for a shop update. Get yourself comfy cozy. Get your snack, your beverage of choice. Take a seat. Let's sit back. Let's chit chat about some cars. It was a busy week. Super busy week. We sent one home. We've got progress on a bunch of them. It has been a solid week. The weather is starting to kind of stay consistently being warm, which is always good. It makes productivity go up and up and up. We've got some progress on some sports cars. We've got some progress on some Land Rovers. We got progress all around. And that's good. So let's get cracking with it. We're starting with the beloved Defender 90 project. I know all of you enjoy hearing me talk about this white stallion, this beast of beasts. And I'm happy to bring you the content. So, let's get cracking with it. Christian was doing a lot of door work in the past couple of videos, and that has persisted. He painted the outside of the door last week, and this week he finally got a chance to do the inside. Now, he didn't just like, hey, I waited all week and flipped it over and painted it. He did a bunch of wet sanding on the other side of this thing to get it prepped and ready to be polished up and shiny and pretty and nice. It's looking really good. He's going to have this thing mounted up on Wednesday? No, he's going to have it mounted up on Monday. Do apologize, my weeks are getting jumbly here. Monday he'll have it on the truck, so next week you'll see it mounted up and hopefully like completely done, minus its window. That'll get him rolling into doing stuff like the headliner install and getting some of the other little bits and bobs that we need to take care of before we start putting the interior back in and the windows back in. So there's a few things that need to be cleaned up, a few things that need to be addressed. We also have a little bit more to do with this front bumper and winch system. We got to run our battery wires. Speaking of battery, the owner finally got us a battery for it, which is wonderful. That's great to hear. He was very, very busy, so he couldn't swing by as quickly as he wanted to get us that battery. Not a big deal. We have a few other things to take care of on it. So he got it over to us, and yeah, we'll get it in there and get cracking with it once we need to, because I don't need to do that right now. Let's move along over here to this side of the shop. MGA. I know I haven't updated you on the MGA in a long, long time. We didn't just pull the cover back for show here. This week, Christian actually got a chance to, got a chance to do some more welding on this. There was a few pinholes on this front nose area that we wanted to take care of before we signed off on that. And then we're going to fit up there it is, front fender back onto the car and get that, start getting that squared away. One of the things on this is that I want to get this to the point, or to the same point. It's almost to the same point as the Triumph project here, but I want to kind of get it. I want to kind of get both of these cars moving along in parallel as far as paint work and all of that stuff. This one's been a long time waiting, a super, super long time waiting. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but it's been a long time waiting, and we're getting back on it here. So nothing to talk about on the Triumph this week. However, there is some coming down the pipeline on that one. We've got some things on the way for it, which is good. I do have updates on the Austin Healey 3000, though. Look at that thing. Look at the back end of that thing. Isn't it looking great? Trunks on. Lights are in. Fenders are mounted. Fender beading. Badges. Latches. Progress. What we like to see. She looks really good. Pardon the glare there from the front. She's a shiny car, so she's glary at you. It's looking good. There's a few things that are reminders of the paint shop. And they're kind of poking their head through. You learn your lesson. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we had some troubles with the company that painted this car. We didn't paint this car in-house. We actually jobbed it out due to time constraints. And we were unhappy at first, a little bit happy again, because we told them about the things that we were unhappy with, and they said, well, let's address them, let's fix them. So we sent it to them, and they fixed them, and I'm seeing how they fixed some of them. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. We had a chip on one of these back fenders from taking it apart because it had the Bondo or the filler that they used on the fenders when they did the blocking and filling on the car. The filler had actually bridged the gap between the fender. Let's get in tight on it. I'm getting glare, but it had bridged the gap between the fender and the main bodywork here. So there was filler bridging the gap. So when I pulled this fender off to paint the inside of it, because they forgot to paint the inside of it, it cracked paint out on the fender and on this bodywork here. Now they fixed the paint chip on this side. Good job. They, however, decided, I don't know if I can pick this up on camera, but how they were going to fix the paint chip on this side is they just, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but they just dabbed paint into the chip and said, good enough. So, good job, guys. Anyway, we have ways of addressing that and fixing that and finishing that, because you can fix paint chips by dabbing paint into the chip, and then you come back in with clear coat, because car has clear coat on it, which they didn't dab clear coat over the chip. They just dabbed the color coat. But you come back in with clear coat, and you dab clear coat into that chip as well. You fill it until it's level with the remaining surfaces after a little bit of sanding, and it should just vanish and disappear. You may see just a tiny little hairline outline of where the chip was, but it's sealed up and done correctly, and it's almost indistinguishable by the human eye. You're probably wondering, why didn't you say something when you went to pick the car up? Well, in all honesty, on that one, I actually didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. Some of the other ones I did see, and in all honesty, I think Christian and I were just tired of dealing. We were just tired of dealing with that. So we said, you know what? Hey, it's great, guys. Bye. We brought it back here. We can fix this stuff ourselves. We know how to do that. We're going to do it the right way. So that's on our agenda as well. Once we get a little bit further along, all of that stuff can kind of be fixed closer to it being finished. But it looks good. It looks good. Shiny. It's green. That's a plus. It's got shiny bits on it. It's got chromey bits on it. It looked good. That's not it. We're not done yet. Ha! You thought you were getting away early, huh? Not today. Get in here, Jaguar. I did the written estimate for this fire damaged car this week for the owner and for the insurance company. I haven't actually typed it up yet. I haven't had a chance to do that. But it looks like our culprit is actually on the other side of the engine here. Our culprit for why the fire happened was a fuel line. We had a fuel line rupture on the regulator line, which I believe is the regulator return line. I'll have to look that up. There's a regulator inlet and there's a regulator outlet. Don't know why, but there is. So, that being said, one of those lines ruptured. It has a split down the side of it, and it spews fuel all over the side of the car over there, which, of course, that fuel is going to travel downward to the hot exhaust that's right below it, and it's going to go whoosh and catch on fire, which is what I think happened. I wasn't there. I wasn't living in the engine bay when it happened, so I can't be 100% sure, but that's kind of where the evidence is pointing, is to that happening. Now, this car has really, really low mileage. Super low mileage for an XJS. I think it's, let me take a peek here, 45,000 miles on this car. 1989 with 45,000 miles on the car, which is a good rule of thumb here. So when you hear people say, hey, I've got this, old car and it's got low mileage, it's not really a good thing. I mean, it's nice for a restorer. If the car's untouched and it has low mileage, it means that I get to see how that car was actually put together from the factory. But it doesn't mean it doesn't need a restoration. It doesn't mean that it doesn't need service on stuff. The fuel lines on this were old. They're from 1989. They've never been serviced. I can bet you good money they've never had a service on those fuel lines. So, because of that, they got old. They dried out. They had both a mixture of non-ethanol fuels and ethanol fuels put in them. All that stuff happened throughout 1989. Now, you can have ethanol fuels in 1989 cars. I was just reading my Volvo owner's manual for my 1989 Volvo just over the week, and that car was rated to have ethanol fuels in it. A lot of these cars were. So it's not really the ethanol is drying out the rubber parts or anything like that. Some of these cars were made for it. It's just age. It's just pure age on these parts. This thing got old. The lines started cracking. We all get old. We all start cracking and creaking and leaking places that we don't want to leak, you know. It's not pleasant, but in this case, it leaked fuel all over, went down to the exhaust manifolds, and of course, caught fire. The fire was probably a little bit on the contained side because I believe the car was running, which means the cooling fans were blowing a lot of air, which sounds like it would be adding fuel to that. It'll certainly get really, really hot doing that. It'll be like a furnace, like a blast furnace in there. But essentially, there was no place to go with all that stuff. So the flames were probably contained towards the front half of the car, and then when the owner opened the hood a little bit to see what was going on, it carried that fuel further back and, of course, burned further back on the car, which is horrendous. So it's not the owner's fault that the car has fire damage. That's the fuel line's fault. But the growth of that burning certainly comes from opening the hood. Doesn't matter either way, because the fire damage is the fire damage. Like it's bad. I did my estimate this week on it, and I was genuinely surprised. I mentioned this last week that I may not be able to find a harness, an engine harness for these cars, which it needs a lot of the wiring replaced. And I was very surprised. You can get, I think, every year engine harness for this. I think there's 4 main different engine harnesses. I think there's like 91 and later, 91 to 96 or whenever they stopped making these things, 97 or whatever it was. You can get 91 and earlier to, I think, 88, and then 88 to 79, and then 79 to 75. You can get the 6-cylinder harness, which came out in the later cars. They came out with a 6-cylinder version of this car, which I highly recommend if you find a 6-cylinder version of this car. They are absolutely phenomenal automobiles. These aren't bad cars with 12 cylinders, but I don't know what it is. That 6-cylinder version of this is it's choice. Especially because the 6-cylinder model of this car, you could get it, not all of them, but you could get them with a manual in them. So really, really cool to find one of those. And they have a premium on the manual ones. So people know that they're cool. But you could get the harness for these. I was really surprised by that. There's 3 harnesses up front. There's a main harness, a fuel harness, and an ignition harness. On top of that, you can get most of all of the rubber lines, fuel system components. A lot of the components are available. When I started working on these cars, which is going back some years, these things you couldn't find them in junkyards. They were still a used car, and parts were like whatever was left over at the dealership. And so it's good to see that the aftermarket is starting to catch up with these things. They don't have quite the love that their predecessor, the E-Type, has, but I'm glad to see that people are starting to catch a hold of these things, and they're starting to like them. So that's wonderful. As for the Defender 110 project, I haven't touched it. I haven't done anything with that this week. I was busy. Doing Jags and Healeys and A's and other Defenders and all kinds of other stuff. You'll notice, if you're a keen observer and a subscribed member, and if you're not a subscribed member, well, get subscribed, people. Get on it. You'll notice there's a certain red kitchen appliance named automobile. It is no longer here. That's right. The Sunbeam Alpine went home. I told you I'd do it. I told you. You doubted me, and I told you I'd send it home. I told you. Yeah, I said it. Said last week, I said, I'm going to send that thing home. And this week, I sent it home. Well, I didn't send it home. Christian and I sent it home. Nice car. It finished out really, really well. I've got pictures up on my Instagram and on my Facebook page, but I did link Brooklyn's, so they should be on the Brooklyn's Facebook page, and I think they're on the Brooklyn's Facebook or Instagram page as well. So there's pictures up of it. It turned out really, really good. Ran good. There was a lot of work in that one. Man, did it need a lot. She kept running on. You'd shut it off. We didn't do anything with the engine on that car. It came in for seats and a top and a couple other things here and there. But it would run on. And it didn't have good brakes. So I bled the brakes out. The brakes came back. They just had air in the system. Everything was fine. Everything looked new, like it had been replaced recently within the last 5 years. It was all new. None of it was leaking. It just needed to be bled. So I bled out the brakes. They're great. Turn back around. You turn the car off and it would just run on. It would just run on and run on and run on. And there's two culprits that cause that. It's either a carburetor issue or it's a timing issue. I check timing first because it's the easiest one to check. You just pull out a timing light and see where the timing's at. There's no stroboscopic measurement, stroboscopic timing light. That's a light. That's a gun that flashes to time an engine. There's no setting for that in the workshop manual that I have. And I don't think there is one from Sunbeam. I don't think they have that. I guessed at it being around 5 to 7 degrees advanced. When I checked it with the light, it read at 20 degrees advanced, which is a little bit too advanced for my liking, for any engine's liking, to be honest with you. At idle, 20 degrees advanced at idle, that's pretty crazy. That explains why it was running a little bit hot, and I thought, well, that's why it's running on. So I pulled timing out of it, put it at 5 to 7 degrees, still had a run on. I ended up doing a points check on it. It still had points in it. Put new points, new condenser, new contact lead, checked the coil. Everything was good. Did a real light ignition tune-up on it. Everything was phenomenal. That all checked out great. I ended up setting the timing on the Sunbeam Alpine. I ended up setting that timing statically, and I think they're set statically, if I remember correctly. I think they're set at 9 degrees before top dead center statically. To set an engine statically, you do that not with a timing light. That is done with the engine off. It really can only successfully be done with a points set. Technically, you could do it with an electronic ignition, but it's too convoluted. You set the pulley and the pointer on the front timing cover to where it wants to be, which is at 9 degrees before top dead center is where I put it. There will be marks on the pulley that tell you where it needs to be. You set it at 9 degrees before top dead center, and then you turn the distributor until the points just open on number 1 cylinder. So, and that's now you've set your timing. So it's not the most accurate way of setting timing. It really isn't. You can get pretty accurate with it, but you're relying on a lot of variables there to gain your accuracy. For those of you who are, who know this stuff, you're probably thinking, why didn't you set total advance instead of doing, stroboscopic or static timing? Why didn't you just do a total advance timing with the strobe light? In all honesty, it could have. It's just another way to get you in the ballpark. I mean, all of this kind of gets you in the ballpark for tuning. Static just was working a little bit easier for me. To set it at total advanced, I think those kind of max out their advance at about 32 degrees, 33 degrees total advance. So basically you rev the engine up to, let's say, 3,000 RPMs, and you turn the distributor with the timing light shining down on the pulley until it hits, 32 degrees advance. And then you've set the timing. You're done. You can usually get pretty good with that. I always did it either statically or just regular strobe on it. Whatever works, whatever, it's whatever works for you. That worked for me. Car ran great. After I did that to the distributor and then did a ton of work to the carburetors because the carburetors were masking ignition issues and the ignition was masking carburetor issues, as it always is when nobody knows how to tune their car properly. They tend to just make things mask each other, and then you get an engine that runs on, which you don't care about, because whatever, who cares, whatever. I care. So I fixed it. Carburetors were the diaphragms. If you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see that I put up a YouTube short about the Stromberg carburetors that were on that, and the diaphragms that are in those carburetors were actually perforated really, really badly and very crispy. There should be a very pliable rubber, and they were bad. They were really bad. I'm genuinely surprised the carburetors even worked. They were so bad. So fixed the diaphragms, fixed a couple other things, did some cleanouts, rebuilt the jets, and she ran like a top. Owner's really, really happy. The owner's so happy that the owner has actually come up with a list of other things for us to do, but we don't have time for that. So, on that note, that's all I have for you this week. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, and I hope you have a lovely next week, and I'll see you again on Friday.